Gentlemen, we are going to react to Real Men, Real Style, Anthony Centano's video, Why Modern Men Are So Soft and How to Fix It. Very interesting topic, very controversial topic nowadays. But let's see what Anthony has to say here.
So this modern generation, they're soft, right? They're not financially independent. They're still living at home with their parents. They're totally shielded from hardship. They don't even know how to cook their own food. They're overly sensitive. They want to cancel everything. They don't even know how to hold a conversation. Seriously, they text each other in the same room. When I said soft, I also meant soft literally. Statistically, they're the most obese generation ever. In fact, I think these quotes sum it up. All they love is luxury. They've got bad manners and contempt for authority. Younger generations are soft compared to the warriors of the past. Now, looking at those quotes,
Pretty based so far. Let's continue.
it wouldn't be a bad guess if you thought I pulled them from Reddit or the comment section here on YouTube. But the reality is those quotes are about 2,500 years old. Seriously, those quotes are
He got me there.
from old Socrates and Juvenal. Now, I highlight this because I want to make an important point. This video is not about bashing modern men. In fact, I'm going to argue that modern men are relatively tough and that as a generation, they're facing challenges I'm happy I didn't have to face at their age.
I will agree that some of the modern problems nowadays might not be as hard on people physically, but perhaps more mentally tough. Especially the modern working environment for some people, the thing about low wages and not having the money to live and get groceries on a weekly basis, that might be very tough for some people. So a lot of mental stress. Also, a lot of that might be self-induced because of the lifestyle choices that we take in modern society. So far, I agree with a lot of the things Anthony has to say here.
Now, the real point of this video is to share with you an insight that I had the other day at a party as I was talking with a group of parents about how easy or difficult, depending on who you spoke to, this modern generation had it. Now, before I share with you my arguments why I think this generation has it tougher than most and why I think they're doing a great job, I want to first address the elephant in the room, and that is, why is it so common for one generation to bash another? Specifically, throughout history, the older generation usually bashing the younger generations. And to prove my point, here are a series of quotes over thousands of years. Yes, again and again. What are we seeing? Generation after generation after generation, going back 1,000 years, going back 500 years, going back 50 years, going back 2,000 years. We see that every older generation is bashing the younger up-and-coming men for doing things that they deem to be immoral, irreverent, and almost always incredibly lazy. So
all older generations bash on newer, younger generations because of different social norms that the generations might be used to compared to the newer generations. Also, the trends that are going on. The older generations might think that the newer generations behave in a much weirder, newer way that is looked down upon by some people from older generations. That might be why. But also because social media and how people use electronic devices and social media and the internet nowadays compared to the older generations, and that is going to be a trend that continues on and on and on for years and generations to come, because we are all going to be different 10 to 100 and maybe even thousands of years in the future.
Why do older generations tend to bash the younger crowd? First up, we've got nostalgia bias. This is when you romanticize your youth. You focus on hardships as character building exercises. Now, the problem with this bias is it skews comparisons between what is happening now and what happened in, that rosy past. I saw this all the time in the Marine Corps. You talk to the guys that have 10, 15 years, they're like, talking about the old Corps somehow wasn't nearly as tough. Now, for anyone that served, in my opinion, in general, that's a bunch of BS. Yeah, you've got exceptional generations like the guys that served in WW2, but overall, in my experience, when guys were called up, when they were put in combat situations, I saw it firsthand. I saw men and women step up and do what needs to get done. And it didn't matter if they had joined in the 80s, the 90s, or 2010. If a person has the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, it doesn't matter if they're Gen Z or Gen X, if they've got my back, I'm cool with that. Next up, we've got the perceived decline of values. And for a lot of people, this one seems real. It does seem the younger generation doesn't have the same work ethic, and they don't have the same respect for authority. However, when you look at this issue and you see it's being brought up for thousands of years, you actually see just simply the values are shifting. I'll tell you one thing I think I've noticed with this younger generation. It's not that they don't have a work ethic, it's they're actually looking for a challenge and they want to be motivated. And finally, let's talk about the technological divide. Now, younger generations, they see people using ChatGPT and all this AI to be able to do their work, and they think it's going to make them stupid. You know, in a way, I sort of agree with this, and I do think TikTok and short form videos have not done much for the intellectual abilities of most. However, the same arguments were made when washing machines came out.
In many cases nowadays, if you don't utilize AI in some type of way, you are missing out on some opportunity and automatically done for you by AI. Even though I don't use AI myself in any way, shape, or form, at least not right now, but if you can utilize AI in your work in any way, I definitely think you should. It might make your job slightly easier. And that is just a bias from some older generations that AI or new technology might make you stupid because they might not know what it is to a full extent and might be scared or intimidated by it, and because they don't know how to use it and what it is.
Maybe a better example is the calculator. I mean, you need to be able to do all that stuff by hand. If you're relying on a calculator, you aren't going anywhere.
I'm very bad at math, so I'm using calculators 24/7. I'm very bad at math.
They said. Now, the dangerous part here is that there is an illusion of truth. You can selectively take some statistics, and you can clearly show that the use of calculators or now the use of AI is making people dumber. I mean, the data is pretty clear that this latest generation is physically soft. They are more overweight than any generation before them. And so it would probably be better if what? They were moving. Maybe they had jobs that didn't have them sitting in front of a computer all day. Now, I can't argue with those facts, but what I can bring to your attention is the fact that statistics now are used as a tool of persuasion, not a tool for figuring out what is the truth. By that, I mean, if you've got a belief, you're going to fall oftentimes into confirmation bias. You are going to go out there and look for facts that confirm what you believe. And the internet makes this incredibly easy. If you want to believe that the earth is flat, you can type in, yes, you'll find a lot of stuff that is showing you it's not, but there's probably something out there that will substantiate what you want to believe, even when it's something crazy. Hence why we get all these crazy conspiracy theories. And yes, I know some of them are true, such as that God speaks to us through Creed Aventus. But seriously, if you understand statistics, you understand that you can always find some truth in numbers, and that by quoting out of context, using small sample sizes, or not understanding the difference between correlation and causation, which in case if you don't know, correlation is when two things happen at about the same time, but one of them does not cause the other. Example being during the summer, we see more shark attacks and more ice cream sales, which if it's not obvious, ice cream does not cause shark attacks. If it did, that would be causation, which if you wanted an example of that, we could have taxi usage and rainstorms. If you've ever been in New York City in a rainstorm, you know that it's almost impossible to get a taxi because rainstorms cause usage to go up. My point in all this, though, is that most people don't understand statistics. And in a world where you've got marketers, and I admit I am one of them, that know how to use this to actually
You get the data that you want to get, not necessarily the data that you need.
Be able to influence people, we often see people using numbers to be able to create stories, drama, conflict, where there actually isn't any. And gents, that's a really important point, which I'm going to get back to here in a minute. But let's talk about this latest new modern generation. What are the problems that they face that I think actually they're doing a pretty damn good job? But before we go there, I want to address the areas I think most people would argue that this modern generation is relatively soft about. I'm talking about the areas of life, the actions we see this younger generation taking that a lot of us over the age of 30, 40, 50, well, we consider their approach soft. But is it? First up, we've got physical fitness. I've said it multiple times. This modern generation is the largest, the most obese, the most overweight.
The world has an epidemic at the moment with mass obesity. That is not a conspiracy, that is true. So what he's saying so far is accurate.
They're also not performing as well athletically as what would be expected. If anyone follows sports, what they probably are noticing in a number of sports across the spectrum, less and less records are being broken. In fact, it seems like in general, modern athletes aren't pushing themselves like athletes were in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s. So if you look at that data,
We could speculate that the reason athletes are not as good as they were 10, 15 years ago is because they get paid so much more than they did 10, 15 years ago, hence why they perform at a slightly lower average level than they did 10, 15 years ago. That's why they don't want to break any records and do outstanding work, but only perform averagely, because they know that their pay grade is going to be insane no matter how they perform, as long as they do as good of a job enough to maintain their job at the moment. If you look at Manchester City, they have won the league title 4 years in a row. They get paid millions of dollars every month. They have accomplished every single thing that they could achieve in the last 4 or 5 years, and they have been on an insane losing streak in the past few months. And why is that? Some people might say it's because of bad performance. I tend to agree, but why do they perform badly all of a sudden after 4 or 5 years of massive success? It's because they have achieved everything they wanted to achieve many years in a row, but they still get an insane amount of money as their salary. They aren't motivated, they aren't inspired, they've achieved what they wanted, and they don't want to break any other unnecessary records. That might be why.
And it's pretty clear, right? They're soft. However, the counter argument to that is look at the fitness culture that we've got today. Look at all the different ways that people are staying in shape, redefining what it means to be healthy, realizing
Many of the people he mentioned as examples are unnatural and on steroids, gear, treatments, and such. And in many cases, it's just for show.
that maybe going after extreme records and pushing yourself too hard too early actually leads to a breakdown, when it's better to find non-competitive sports and exercises that are going to keep you healthy into old age. I mean, when you look at the number of men that have gotten into yoga, gotten into hiking, alternative sports, the number of guys participating in CrossFit, and they will tell you if they're in CrossFit, but seriously, I mean, Spartan races, all this other stuff. I mean, if you
Anthony is so based. It's so funny.
look at it with that perspective, in addition, this generation is paying attention to their blood work. They know about their testosterone levels. They're starting to pay a lot more attention to what's going into their bodies. I mean, in a way, you could argue that this generation is incredibly healthy. Let's go over to workout.
Just because you get your blood work done doesn't mean you're healthy. It actually also means that your blood work needs to be good in order to be healthy. And even though your blood work might be healthy, you might not be healthy because you might be taking steroids and or other supplements that might not be good for you to make your blood work look healthy and good.
Ethic. A lot of guys, especially business owners in their 50s and 60s, say they can't find anybody that's willing to just show up and do the work. A lot of companies say it's difficult to be able to get people to come into the office and work 40 to 50 to 60 hours. A lot of people don't want to work overtime, or they don't want to work jobs in the trades that are going to be having them use their hands. On the flip side, maybe you've got a generation that actually prioritizes other things instead of work. I have to admit, I'm a recovering workaholic. I, in many ways, define myself by what I've accomplished professionally and by the amount of time, the amount of effort, what I'm able to produce with my companies. But I've talked to a lot of younger men that really this isn't their dream. They don't want to get into the hustle culture. They don't want to work themselves to the bone or into an early grave.
Because they're soft and don't want to work.
I've also spoken to some other young men that, you know what, they don't want to work jobs that are boring to them. Yes, they could make some money here, they could go this route, but they don't want to work under a bad boss, and they definitely don't want to work 8 to 10 hours a day, slaving away doing something that isn't going to bring them any fulfillment and trap them into a path which they've seen their dad wake up 20 years later and regret doing. I've also met some younger men that are working 80 to 100 hours a week, doing what they love, setting up their own businesses, going out there and getting rental properties and building and investing there, and working with their hands, learning the basics of plumbing, carpentry, roofing, and everything that goes with it, and loving that type of work because it's fulfilling, and they're doing it for themselves or for their own business. So I don't know, maybe this new generation's got it figured out. But these younger guys, these modern men, are soft because they need to talk about things. They're offended whenever you say something. They're triggered. They need to go to therapy and talk it out. I'll tell you, growing up in West Texas around a lot of guys that didn't say anything, and they would just keep that anger in and eventually explode and blow up like a volcano. You know, I'm not sure that old way of doing it, of keeping it all inside, is the right path.
As long as you have a few close friends or family you can actually open up about these feelings, you're good. I really think that men need other men to talk about their feelings because, as Anthony said previously, it doesn't really help to hold in those feelings and explode and possibly end in self harm and possibly ending your own life. That doesn't really help anyone. So, that is a really good thing to actually talk with someone about how you're feeling. And I think our generation is a little bit better, and the newer generations might be a little bit better about coming out with those feelings than some other generations. but I think we are always going to be bad at expressing our feelings to some extent, at least us guys. But I think it's something that we need to be better at.
Now, I will agree there are some guys out there that are just a little bit too emotional. I don't need to see you breaking down on TikTok.
That's very true. Some people overdo it by a long shot, but let's look at the median here and let's look at the average guy who doesn't express his feelings to his closest friends, which I highly recommend they do. But yeah, some people on TikTok might overdo it by a long shot.
And you're posting it every single video. But man, there's something to be said about being able to open up, to be able to talk about things, especially when you've got a group of peers, if you've got a support group, if you've got a therapist, if you find someone, if you find a process that works for you, it can be life changing. So, in this way, yeah, I'd have to say some modern men take it to an extreme, but I like that we've now got this option and that it's much more acceptable. Now, earlier in this video, I talked about that this came out of a conversation I had with some other parents. And what I saw is a lot of the other parents just trashing on their own kids. And it was frustrating because I know that these kids are dealing with issues. Like I said, I've got 7 of them. So, in typical Antonio fashion, I actually took the opposing view and I talked about all the things, and it actually surprised me that the parents hadn't really thought about this. I talked about all the things that these kids are facing, these young men are facing in today's world that we didn't even have to worry about. First up, let's talk about the unhealthy food. Have you ever tried going into a grocery store and buying something that isn't infused with preservatives or sugar? Good luck finding anything in the cereal aisle. In fact, in the entire inside of the supermarket, it's a freaking set of landmines. There isn't really anything healthy inside. You've got to go to the fresh food, you got to go to the meat, you got to go to the eggs, which is a hack in of itself. Just shop on the outside of the grocery aisles and you're going to probably do better than buying anything on the inside. Next up, let's talk about the overwhelming choice.
One of the problem with the grocery stores thing might be a bigger issue in the West and in the US and Canada, but I definitely see what he's saying. A lot of people complain about healthy food being very expensive, but we just gotta think outside the box. Look at some recipes, look at what you can do, and minimize your spending while at the same time eating somewhat healthy.
The mom, she's like, oh, he's got so many more opportunities than I ever had. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. He has unlimited opportunities. And that is stifling. That can paralyze people. When you see all these options, I mean, we know this. A lot of you guys out there dating, you see this again and again. You get in a relationship and she wants to continue dating because she wants to, play the field. She sees all these options, or you fall into this trap. You're always like, you know what? It's not perfect in this relationship. I'm going to move on to the next one. You know what? No relationship is perfect. Every relationship is work. I mean, being honest, I can't imagine what it would be like for my 18 or 22-year-old self to have all of these options on the apps or just simply career-wise. This could be tough. This could be paralyzing. The overabundance of choice. This is a real dilemma that people face. And yeah, I can't say that I would like to have it or that I would have done as well as I did if it had been put in front of me. Next up,
It's called one thing: decision fatigue. If you have too many things you can choose between, you will get tired of the amount of choices that you have available. That's why I highly recommend in any criteria of your life, if you can minimize the choices that you do on a day-to-day basis, please do so. Make your life as easy as possible for yourself in every criteria to make your life easier, to put an ease of your mind so you can think clearer and have a better day every day, so you don't get fatigued by all of the choices that you can have throughout the day. It is a real issue, so please minimize the things you need to decide upon and need to execute. Make a plan, get your clothes ready for the day so you don't need to think about what you want to wear to make your days easier. It will compound to years of much easier living than it would be if you constantly have thousands upon thousands of choices that you need to do every single day.
Isolation in a connected world. Yeah, we're talking about two people being in the same room texting each other, but yeah, their social skills haven't developed. And we've also set up conditions at schools. I don't know if you've been to them lately, but everyone's on computers. They're not using the books anymore. They're sitting in these desks all day, have very little time to socialize. On top of that, there's a constant comparison. Everybody is on Snapchat, they're on Instagram. They are comparing themselves, especially women and men. Or, hey, he's got six-pack abs. That guy is built well. He's super tall. Never before in human history have so many men felt inferior based off a measurement they have no control over. And let's face it, any of you short kings know it does not determine your happiness. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you can break free of those chains. But it's difficult because society is consistently hitting you with these messages that you aren't adequate, that you aren't good enough, that you don't measure up. Throw in the 24/7 news cycle that's creating all this anxiety about, climate change or school shootings. The hyper consumerism, where you got to be a millionaire, you've got to have the money, you've got to buy the streetwear to fit in, you got to be able to afford the vacation, to be able to take the pictures with your girl. Oh, and all of this with a lack of privacy, because if you make a mistake, it gets caught on video and everyone sees it and you get shamed into oblivion. Gents,
Social media is very dangerous in a lot of ways, so be careful who you compare yourself to, and be careful what you do that might or might not be recorded.
I don't know about you, but I am happy I grew up in the time period I did. And this takes me to the point I really want you to take away from this video. And it's that whether you are Gen X, whether you are Gen Z, you're a millennial, you're one of this new betas. I think they're just being bored. A horrible, horrible name. But yeah, it is what it is. Wherever you may fall in the generational divide, I don't think there should be a divide. I really want to see more men lifting up other men, people helping each other, taking the steps to cross that divide, offering mentorship. Guys in their 50s, mentoring guys that are in their teens, helping them see what's out there and overcome the difficulties. And also getting them up to speed on technology and all the new tools that make incredible things possible. Gents, we're all the same fighting this battle. And our enemy is not each other. No, our enemy are those that are trying to divide us and keep us apart, keep us from unifying. Because if we did, like a closed fist, we would bust through and make this world a better place. So, gents, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below. And don't stop watching. I got you covered.
I totally agree with Antonio. I called him Anthony throughout the entire video. That's very embarrassing. Antonio. I agree with everything he had to say here. It's very good video, and Jalen, I wish you an amazing day, and please take care of yourself.